I'm ranaal-falaki.
I'm Patel.
And welcome to
the Nail It podcast.
This is your place to lead better, live fully, and laugh more. It's your blueprint to optimal performance. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Nail It podcast. Your place to
lead better, live fully, laugh more.
And laugh more. I'm going to have to work on that enthusiasm.
What's that? Wait, well, the laugh more bit?
Yes.
Or just generally?
You were the one the other day who was just saying to me, oh, we need more laughter. Let's get our guests to tell jokes.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I've got loads of dad jokes.
Who needs jokes when we can just look at you, Babin?
Yeah, I love that. Do you know what? Actually, I was going to say, I've got a new camera. I don't know if you noticed. A new camera.
Actually, oh my gosh, you are looking super snazzy.
Radiant, yeah, not pregnant.
Bright and a full screen. I'm impressed.
I know.
Beautiful.
After George's episode, he told us to invest,
Oh,
didn't he?
yes, he did, and he had advice. Yeah, he's a brilliant source of knowledge. But we have another amazing guest today, Bav.
Yeah, we've got Aalok Shukla, who's the co-founder of ImplementAI, who provides digital workers for businesses internationally and in the UK. So I've been looking forward to speaking to Aalok. I know Aalok from university. He may not even remember me, but I remember Aalok because he was like one of the people that you saw around university, and he was like, I say, one of the friendliest people around. And do you remember, one of my favorite quotes is, you forget what people said, what they did, but you never forget how they made you feel. And Aalok was one of the first people I met at university. He probably doesn't remember this, but on the first day I got to university, I couldn't find my dental mum, who had mums and dads. And Aalok sort of took me under his wing. You probably don't remember. I don't know if you were drunk or not, but yeah, I obviously don't remember our conversations, but I remember how you made me feel. And I've always remembered that's 25 years.
And how did he make you feel, Bev?
It made me feel welcome.
Oh,
I'd just come from Leicester. I was just a little rude boy from Leicester. I just turned up and rocked up at university. No friends, didn't know anyone. Just was like looking for my dental mum. I don't know where she was. But I don't know. I just remember speaking to Aalok and another one of his friends, actually, a guy called Vishal.
I was with him yesterday. That's a wonderful, and I haven't seen that guy in ages as well. That's a wonderful story. Yeah.
And I always remember that. So thanks for that, Aalok. Yes, I probably didn't say thank you at the time, but 25 years on, I'd like to say thank you.
Well, that's really nice, Beth, that your brain matter is still remembering things 25 years ago.
I know, I'm getting old as well.
It's quite handy, really, yeah.
But Aalok, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
No worries.
So AI, Bav said to me, you are I know this AI guy, so we're really keen because it's the revolution that some people thought would never happen. But before we get on to that, you are of course on the Nail It podcast. So we have to ask you, our first question is, what is your favorite quote and why?
I'd say like the wise see knowledge in action as one.
Say it slowly, like an announcement.
The wise see knowledge and action as one.
The wise, meaning wise people, see knowledge and action as one. I don't even think I've heard that before, but I love the words.
Yeah, who said that,
It's from the Gita. So it's like an Indian book where they're talking during a war, and then someone is confused and is looking for like how to act and basically deal with like conflict and issues. And that's one of the quotes within there. So for me, I always think that like the world is drowning in information. Anybody can get hold of information. Information is just copy paste. But the thing is, experience and information applied is knowledge. And then the point is, if you have that knowledge and you actually put it into action, then that's meaningful. So that's the reason I like it, because it's about what's the point in knowing something if you don't do anything about it.
I love that. That follows on from my common phrase, which is information is not the same as implementation. Like whenever I'm teaching, doing any training on Nail It, be it webinars, workshops, events, that's always it. It's kind of like, you got to implement because you can know it all. It's like people saying, I should. It's like, yeah, you should, but then why aren't you? You actually have to do it and you have to experience it. And if we go by the learning pyramid as well, through experience, the retention as well is 90% greater. So if you really want to shift then you have to experience that. I love that. That's wonderful. Yeah.
So why see information and knowledge as one?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Knowledge in action is one. Knowledge in
Knowledge
action.
in action is one, so it's the actual the action part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it. Absolutely.
Right.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
very aligned with us. So, talking about knowledge and information, and like you said, it's just copy paste.
Mm.
First, actually, I just want to backtrack a little bit more because you were introduced as Aalok, and if someone isn't watching this on video and just listening to audio, he does still use the title Dr. Bav. So, an ex-dentist, obviously went to dental school with Bav. So you left in 2016. You stopped doing clinical dentistry. Why?
So if you go before that, I got into medical school basically. So I never wanted. My dad's a doctor. From grew up in Lancaster. No one in my family's from business or anything like that. But I knew when I was a younger age, I kind of want to have more control of my destiny. I didn't know what word that was, and I didn't. I just thought like there's something where you can actually like potentially like control your path a bit more. Got into medical school. After like halfway through the first year, I was like, if I don't do something, I'm going to graduate as a doctor, and I don't really want to be a doctor because like I was like, I've got other things I potentially want to do, and not that there's nothing any, it just wasn't the path I felt for me basically. And so I remember I went to the dean and I was saying, is it possible to switch courses? And she was like, no, you can't switch courses. I'm like, well, anyway, I got into the room and I had made my mind up that I'm not leaving without switching, basically, and managed to switch. And then I was in dentistry, and I was like, okay, so I'm good, understand biology, I understand different things like this. What is this? Because I really didn't know too much about it. I was very naive. I had like a medical model in my head in terms of, like you just look after patients and you get your salary basically, right? And then went through dental school. And then it was quite funny, Bav, that you said that actually, that how we met, because I started actually doing talks for opening students and stuff like this because I was
Mm.
always looking at things and saying like, we're learning this in public health, but why don't we apply this or in the waiting room and stuff like that. So I was always like curious and just asking questions. Anyway, graduated, worked in different places, and then I thought I'd like to have my own practice someday. So, set up my own practice in London from scratch. It took a while to kind of get there, but did that. And then I was thought, okay, let me start applying my ideas. So I had ideas for, marketing, different things. We started doing online consultations back in 2011, 2012, basically. And so from that and some other things, and I was into like technology and automation, we did different bits like that. And so, one thing leads to another, and you start to see, okay, social media is taking off and different things are there. So I was really interested in the digital part of it. I was like, this is quite interesting. And, we have patients coming from all across the UK, even though we're just a clinic in Putney. And I thought that's very, very interesting that you can build relationships digitally online. One thing leads to another. And I think, okay, there's opportunities in this space and the different things. And so I ended up selling my clinic in 2016, started telling a health business, moved into that space, and then, worked on different things around 2017, 2018. I thought we can apply, mobile phone images to AI and different stuff like this. And so we were doing some stuff back then, got into an accelerator in London. One thing leads to another, basically. And then, that's my path, basically. I just was always thinking, how do you scale expertise through technology? That was my always question since day one. How do you use technology to make things more affordable, more accessible, just more equitable, basically, right? So to be honest, everything's just like following that path.
So,
So,
but how did you know to follow your path? Because, like you said, one thing leads after another. Now, that doesn't necessarily happen to everybody. You kind of need to be open. You need to have some purpose, some passion. You need to be open to kind of guidance, as it were, of synchronicities, opportunities that happen, seizing those opportunities. So it doesn't just happen just like that. It's either you seeking it out or other people recommending you. I mean, how did you know to follow that path?
I mean, I think from a young age, everybody kind of knows in their own head like what they want to kind of do, and then you kind of like get to a point where you're like, if I don't take this decision, if I don't go this path, will I feel good about myself? Will I be able to, you know, feel happy about not taking those options? And I think, you take one step, you take another step, and you just keep going that way. I'll be honest, I've always kind of like followed my own thing. I don't, that's just the main thing.
But that's the entrepreneur in you, right? And what you're describing in
Uh,
many ways is an entrepreneurial
Or,
attitude
or,
where we
or
do
being,
tend to go for it.
or just trying to have integrity with yourself, to be honest, right? Like it's just like if you want to do something, try,
mm.
You've got, yes, but you've got to be willing to be aligned. But an awful lot of people won't
willing
try.
to fail.
You've got to be willing to fail. And there's this phrase, the only way you can fail is not to try,
Yeah.
in actual fact. But a lot of people will not. They'll come up with a million things. Like I'll tell you, when I wrote my first book, the start of the chapter, it's all about like, what do you want? And the reality is most people answer it immediately by thinking about what they don't want. And then you're asking people to really step out of the box. And I ask in the book these extremely probing questions about every aspect of your life. And it's very challenging for people to answer it because they don't think outside the box. They only think in their current reality, such as, oh, I couldn't leave dentistry because I need the money. Or, I might love this, but I wouldn't dare doing this. Or they're sitting there logically trying to work out the what ifs that it stops them from taking the action. What I heard you say was, actually, I don't even think you can imagine people like that because this is how your brain happens to be wired. Use this term saying, isn't that what everybody does? It's like, actually, no,
No,
they really
no,
don't.
no. Of course it's not. But the thing is, I'm more driven by what I want future to potentially be, or different things
Yeah.
like this. And to be fair to most people have not actually thought about what they want themselves. Most
No.
people are actually just repeating what someone else said they wanted, mimetic
Mhm.
behavior. So, it takes some time to actually, like, you got to be away from people and really spend some time to actually get to know yourself and understand what drives you, really, isn't it?
That's
Yeah,
exactly what
yeah. And
we
I
sort of
think that's
teach
exactly it.
as we
Sorry, Bab,
business profiling. Yeah.
I was hogging the conversation. You said something, but it was a
No,
just
yeah. Well,
humble.
I was going to come on to something, but it's important that I mention that finding yourself first. And like I say, with disc profiling, that's exactly what we teach to do, isn't it? Is that your own drivers, where you sort of fall on the personality traits and how strongly you are a part of that trait and how much energy it takes to get to another part of it. And that's and sort of understanding that there's no right or wrong, but understanding
Exactly.
what's best for you. Yeah, look, I was going to get onto so was there a moment that you've done this implement AI, and I understand your business partner is an ex-Dragon.
Yeah, Piers Linney.
Yeah, Piers Linney. How did that happen?
So in 2019, I was on a NatWest basically like podcast basically, and they'd hired Piers to do a series on health tech. Well, basically the future of business and innovation essentially. And one of our advisors was head of technology for NatWest basically, and he'd said to me, "Alok, you should be interested in coming on this podcast." And I was actually in Ireland at a conference at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So I was with my wife, and I said, "Like, actually, Lucy, like, there's this opportunity here." She goes, "Yeah, go for it." So I just came across to London, and yeah, met on that podcast. It's on YouTube. It was like in 2019, and we talked about different things and. I don't know. I was super keen, and I obviously I seen him on TV when I was younger and stuff like that. And we were just talking about different things, and he liked a couple of things I had to say. We were talking about blue ocean strategy and different opportunities and different things like this. And he goes, "Well, I've got a podcast for them as well because it was a video one that we did first." He goes, "Do you want to come on that?" So I said, "Sure." So then we went on that one, which was part of the NatWest series as well. That was around 45 minutes, and we were talking in more detail. At that time, he was launching a new business, and he was looking at doing different things. And just I was doing some work with GSK, and like our paths crossed several times where he was like lecturing for GSK. So like our paths crossed like following 6 months later. Then one time I was in London because I live in Lisbon. I was in London literally in the Pret a Manger next to Waterloo Station. I had to like print off and sign some papers from a mailboxes, etc., to like put hard copy in the post. And then I was just like at the Pret, and I was just like doing the envelope, and someone tapped me on the shoulder, say, "Hey, Alec, how's it going?" And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" Like, this is the most random. I'm here for like literally 2 days, and it was quite funny. So we bumped into each other over the years, and essentially what happened is kept in touch. And then in 2023, when GPT came out, no, 2022, when GPT came out in like November, December, around November, January, I was like looking at it and I was thinking, this actually fundamentally resets things. Because I'd worked with like neural networks, deep learning in 2017, 2018. It was very expensive, took a lot of time. And what you could actually do to actually like train a visual model, it was very cumbersome to have the pipeline. But I realized we'd also done quite a bit of work with robotic process automation and different types of automation. So I was very familiar with like different forms of technology. I'd also used, robotic arms in manufacturing and different stuff like this. So I'm good at technology and I'm good at systems and deconstructing things and reconstructing things. And so I kind of thought this actually resets the toolkits for a business owner. And, I mean, way back when I had my own clinic, we had like, we had some people working for the Philippines for the practice, or had lots of automation. So I was always like, how can you leverage technology at that point? And I was like, well, really now there's the opportunity to almost have a team of digital workers, basically. Like that's the concept. And essentially, if you can have that additional workforce, how can that be? So I was in Lisbon and I thought, let me run a session on AIs for executives, like how to think about it. So I started promoting it, and I've got reasonable network. And then a few people started messaging me saying, "This is very interesting. You're going to do one in London." And I was like, well, we can basically. And the guy who invited me, I'm seeing him tomorrow, and he's got like quite a large financial advisor audience. And like, so we ended up doing an event in London. And during that time, Piers was saying, this is quite interesting. Maybe I'll do something in the space too. I said, you should. But I said, like, to be perfectly honest with you, Piers, the more I explain things to people, people are just like, yeah, look, can you just do it for me? Because I said, like, nobody wants to learn anything, right? They just want the thing done, right? So that's how it formed. And then we started Implement AI, basically.
Nice. That's amazing.
That's amazing. So on AI, and do you see what I mean? The synchronicities, you kept bumping into him.
Or he or each
Well, he's
other.
following you. Yeah, he's stalking you.
No. But it's just like, yeah, I do agree with that. I do agree with synchronicity. I do agree with all those sorts of things.
In that,
And then
it's kind of like it's little signs, isn't it? Little signs, just little
well,
flags.
synchronicity is non-causal basically outcomes essentially, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, if you bumped into each other online, like nowadays, it would be like, no, that's just the algorithms. That's nothing. That's nothing else.
Yeah,
But when it's in
there's
person,
the
it's kind
internet.
of like, oh, okay, that's because I do hear that. Don't you hear that? People are like, oh, well, this stuff keeps popping up on my feed, so it must be a sign. And I'm like, no, it's just algorithms.
it's retargeting.
Just
That's all
listening
it
to you.
is.
Yeah, just listening to you.
So on AI, a lot of people just think GPT and aren't aware of all of these other potential platforms and strengths.
Good and bad, potentially.
If you had to choose one,
Well,
it's a difficult.
I use Claude pretty much all the time in max mode, basically.
You
But I
do.
mean, if you want to talk about this, okay, so
We
there's
do.
two parts, right? So first of all, you want to augment yourself as an individual. So this is what we always say to people, like just augment yourself and experience it. Most people, if they're using the free version of GPT, they're using 18-month-old technology, to be honest, right? So you're not going to be considering that that's like state of the art. Like, I mean, if you look at like the latest like Claude models, like, Opus 4.6, and you look at like the power of what that's possible with, it's really quite profound in the way that you can kind of create very complex documents, analysis, different stuff like this. And I use an audio keyboard as well. So that speeds up the whole process as well, because you don't have to then type. And it's not just the audio mode on the things called Whisper Flow, for example. That speeds up the whole thing where you can rapidly put documents together and prototypes. So yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do. But I would say to anybody, if you're trying to create images, Gemini is very good. I talk to different people who want to do image-based stuff. Like, even my sister-in-law, she wanted to like prototype what her new deck could look like. And so she said GPT is not very good. I said use Gemini for that. And if someone wants to turn that into video, you can use Grok with a K. But yeah, I mean, the different tools for different people, but you should really try and use it and see what you can get from it, basically.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the space. AI. I'm one of these suckers that listen to any podcast with a bit of AI in it, and you've obviously got, like I say, all the very, very good things, and that people it can help people. But there's also big concerns about this thing called AGI. What's your take on that? Obviously, in that sort of space of, and where do you see us in the future? And fast forward 5, 10 years, where do you see what humans? What is human pop?
Hold on, for our listeners, what's AGI?
Got Alok, I'll let you.
So artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, ASI, basically what Bab you're talking about is a point where you have like a recursive self-intelligence. So basically it's just learning by itself and improving by itself, and it exceeds human capacity or even the sum total of human capacity to decide or do anything, and then the challenge there is that like how will that affect things? I mean, there's a paper called AI 2027. If anyone's not read it, they should probably read that. And basically what that is a paper is it's setting out like how essentially all geopolitics in the world will kind of shift as there is the race between essentially China and USA with the frontier labs, about like how who reaches basically the self-learning coding agent first. And to be honest, from the news from Anthropic, like maker of Claude, and also from OpenAI with their Codex model, that's kind of there already. Just to give context, like people think GPT, you just put a question and it comes out with it. Frontier models like Claude and Codex, they can run for 14 hours non-stop on a complex problem, and people are using it like that, basically. So if you think about the innermost loop of technology within AGI, basically the first role is basically software engineers or basically, coders.
Yeah.
AI coders help create a better coding model, which helps create a better better coding model. So that loop is already happening now. So we're in this point which most people define as a singularity, which is beyond the point where you can actually predict what things are going to happen, because the rate of AI's improvement is very fast. And basically what you're asking is 5 years from now, I mean, people are going to have to adapt a lot, basically, right? I think the key thing you got to think about is that we're in the midst of the greatest rate of change there's ever been, basically, and many kind of like knowledge work jobs. See, people thought like the manual labor would get automated first, and robotics is coming, but it's not that came first. It's actually creative and knowledge work that comes first, like legal lawyers,
Yeah,
accountants, any rule-based profession, which is basically document or text heavy or number heavy, is the easiest to actually
yeah.
get high quality output from. So I think the key thing is there is always a space for people to have like agency and connection and do things. But I do think people have to dramatically reevaluate, like how they can upskill and be more entrepreneurial because you're going to have to create your own opportunities because some of the opportunities that were there before, those jobs won't be there anymore, basically.
This is my concern. So it's okay. My children, they are 6 and 8. What do you see their future being? What would you say? What
So
would you say to anyone that's going into higher education, universities? Because I'm hearing obviously the latest studies are saying that graduates are less likely to get jobs than people that graduate from high school, because those sorts of jobs, as you quite rightly say, are the ones that require a level of intelligence.
if you are if you thought your job was just to basically repeat or regurgitate some information that you memorized,
Mm,
you're
yeah.
that's not the job now, basically, right? But there is plenty of jobs for young people. So my advice to somebody that's like thinking about how to think about their careers, I'd say there's three dimensions that you want to kind of learn in, basically. One dimension is you want to get good at basically storytelling, presenting, communication, interpersonal skills, knowing your own emotions, knowing how to communicate with other people, knowing how to tell a story, know how to like present your ideas in a compelling way, right? That's very important because there's still 7 billion, 8 billion people around, isn't it? Right. So there's always going to be the need to lead, guide, help, organize. That's not going anywhere. Okay. The second thing I would say is that you need to have a systems mindset. So what this means is you need to be able to think across disciplines. So if you've spent all your time in one discipline, in one area, you can only see what has already been there in the past, right? But when you've actually start to understand, okay, like for example, the simplest way, chemistry, physics, mathematics, you start to think about like, okay, the principles of momentum. You think about the principles of like, entropy or different stuff like this, or even like, how, human motivations and behaviors and like how reward systems and psychology, the more systems then also like moving into business or moving into like law, the greater the ability for you to think about how to apply technology in different areas and to also understand how to get a bigger result by coordinating the pieces. So I think the key thing is that like as technology takes more and more um tasks away, there's space for the humans to go up the pyramid. Basically, you go up the value pyramid, and you want to then basically stand on and orchestrate different technologies to help you get more things done. So I would say basically like number one is communication skills. Number two is like having a systems mindset, and the more you can like learn and understand about that is and critical thinking is part of that. So none of this is about memorizing facts, okay? All of this
Mm.
is about how to like work things out from first principles and understand and even have a working knowledge of like lean and different stuff like this basically. The third part of it would then be like figure something you're passionate about and interested in. It could be sport, it could be anything, doesn't matter. And then apply those first two dimensions to it. You will create your own opportunity. There's no question about it, basically. Because if anyone comes across someone that's enthusiastic, got agency, motivated, there's always a role for that person. But there isn't necessarily a role for the person that just wants to passively contribute, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah, so even more reason to develop those leadership skills, right? Leadership skills, integrity, going with the flow, understanding who you are. And when you talked about all of those things, presentation skills, speaking, communication, effective kind of dynamic leadership. I'm just thinking, but all I was thinking about was it's just as well we teach people that, isn't it?
Yeah, this is
It's,
what
it's,
I
it's
mean.
so it's so needed. That's the whole point,
So
isn't it? Right?
important. It's so important. And
Yeah, the ability, because there is still the desire for humanity. I think there's what I'm seeing is a little bit of AI fatigue going on, and that's not in terms of how to utilize it. because it's incredible and can massively, if you know how to use it the right way, can massively increase your productivity. And then of course all the software that happens to use AI, the CRMs, all the other tools, people who are in small businesses, it's fantastic that way. But there's AI fatigue on the other end. People thinking, are these original words or aren't they? Are these original images or aren't they? And people are starting to spot it. And there's an increasing amount of mistrust because they're not necessarily someone's words. I mean, I think, the image generation is fantastic, but then again, the image generation can actually also be quite frightening for
But
many.
this comes into curation, basically, isn't it? Right. So if you've got a perspective and obviously like you fill it with the context of like your deep perspectives and different things like this, then you can come up with very very good amplified content, basically. But if you're just asking, please just write me something on this, of course it's going to be generic and nonsense. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but that's application. That's not leverage.
No, and that's knowing how to use the tools properly. But I'm talking about the readers, the people who are then reading social media posts, for example, with the double dashes of,
Yeah.
of ChatGPT, and then it becomes and actually it could be genuinely someone's words, but it does. Yeah, there's just an increasing amount of mistrust, and in that, I think there is more craving and perhaps that rebellion for people actually wanting the human touch again. Wanting, like you said, presentation skills, wanting to go to an event, wanting that human content, wanting someone to talk to them, and needing that human connection still. So I remember when I wrote my book, someone just again asked me, did I just use AI? And I was
Yeah.
and then I thought, originally I said, well, yeah, I helped, because it was right at the end, and it was like, it was after when we did the online Nail It course, and I was trying to simplify some of the kind of lists for, say, how you can be more authentic, and therefore creating a few acronyms that were relevant, that had something. So I was like, actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll use AI to just help me work out these odd acronyms. But in that, and you have to declare that when you write a book anyway, but they thought I meant that I had written the book with AI, and they were like, that's really great of you to be so honest about that, because most people aren't. And it's true. You could just literally ask ChatGPT to write you a book and then publish it as under, that's my stuff. But no, every single word was mine. And where I've done so much PR as well, every single magazine article that I write, every contribution, it's my words, fingers or voice into keyboard, and that's it. And I can't, I won't run it through ChatGPT, because actually they will check, and they will monitor that. And I remember my now nearly 14-year-old son, he was hilarious when we were filming some videos. They were just 30-second videos that we were doing on social media, again about nail it. So again, I'd used AI to kind of help me like craft the right kind of the right kind of structure or order to do these in, and he got so upset. My elder son was filming, and he was just following us around saying, don't you know that AI reduces your brain capability and your creativity? And he just would not
Brain
stop.
rot.
He got really upset about this.
Yeah.
So what would you say to a child? Because I mean, look, we're all grown adults, we're all similar ages. There is an element of you are helping people actually create and implement these systems in the first place, and I'm sure we used them, but we also learned the other way. So how much do you think it impacts on children's learning if they're just using AI?
But that's a completely different thing, right? Because that's neurodevelopment. So if you
Yeah.
think about like most of the education system, most of the education system is just testing basically, and most testing can be gamed based on patterns of like how past exams were and different things. So that's not really learning. That's just scoring in a gamed system, basically, right? So if you're actually thinking about actual learning, that's actually like forming new connections in your brain, actually gaining experiences, actually building confidence and boundaries around things. So I do think that like people should use technology like for video games or different things like this, absolutely. But you have to understand its place, and you have to also understand the role of other forms of learning and other forms of intelligence and growing. I mean, growing and developing your brain is a very important thing. And you can't just like so you have to understand how to develop that first. I mean, I'm lucky. I grew up like, I'm born in 79, so I grew up being bored when there was nothing at home and different stuff like this. And then I was into electronics, so I used to do a lot of soldering and make different, gadgets and different stuff like that. And then computers came out and different things. So I've been through that whole thing, and I understand life without technology. I understand life with technology, right? So I can, you got the ability to like leverage both. But I think that like those that don't understand and recognize like the other intelligences and how to critically think, they'll just repeat what people said. Like a lot of things that you said, like it caused this brain, like these are not original thoughts from people. These are just people repeating things from other people. They don't actually have a critical understanding of how to use something or how not to use something.
Yeah.
So I think a child needs to have understanding that like how to critically think, and you can't really pay attention too much to what most other people are saying. This is my perspective, but that's just,
Alok, would you say you're quite spiritual?
yeah.
Yeah. And in this new age of AI, where do you think spirituality lies?
Think it's never been more important. Like I think like the whole point is, I mean, we are basically conscious beings having a physical experience, right? At the end of the day. And then the more work I do with AI, the more things I look at things, the more I understand how my own patterns are from within there. I mean, like we provide systems for businesses, right? So we do completely different things in terms of like, other work stuff. But I'll give you a personal example. So I've been using AI quite heavily for the last 3 years. And I think at one point one of my colleagues said, Alok, it would be very helpful if we could just ask you questions digitally at certain points because, we need to like figure out how to do something. So I thought that makes sense. And we provide like digital workers in our business. So for that, you have to have like a objective criteria, what you're trying to do, the role, the goal, the persona, escalation criteria, happy path, sad path. There's all sorts of things to prompt and create that in the right way. So I thought, okay, why don't I extract how I am, my decision making over the last 3 years within at that point I was using GPT. Probably this was probably like September 25. I did this. Um, Extract all of that stuff out, and what would I come out as a prompt basically? So it was like 67 pages basically as a persona basically document. So then I started using that, and then I started like looking a bit more deeply into certain areas and seeing that actually it's quite interesting that this pattern has come up, or this decision making framework, or these different things. And then I was just reading on some stuff I'd read from a long time ago with like the Vedantic model of mind and different stuff like this. And I wrote a book called Pilot Headset Drone, probably like just before December. I'm going to get that published probably next month. But it's available online. But like that whole thing is
Did
just,
you write it, or did you use AI to write it?
I wrote it and then I used
I'm
AI
only
to like,
teasing you. I'm
yeah,
teasing
no,
you.
but I used AI as part of it because the whole point is it pulls together about 7 different theoretical models, which I couldn't understand all the way down, but I'd seen similarities in some of those different areas, basically. But essentially, from that, we have like our sensory part of our mind, which is essentially like dealing with all our senses. Then we got the processing part of our mind. Then we got the memory, and then we got our ego, basically. And then you could see all of those within a prompt, and you can also understand where your patterns come to. So yeah, I just think, Bhavin, like those things are just more relevant, and it
Mm.
also helps you like identify how to use technology and not be used by it, basically.
Yeah, it's a lot of this stuff is quite confusing to a simple mind like mine, um, but yeah, it's a really interesting space, and I'm glad you say that, there's still an element of um, being yourself and
Always.
creating yourself, because there's a lot of people, especially these days, and me and Rena were talking about this, is that even coaches have now got an AI coach, so you can have access to a coach in your pocket. What are your thoughts on that sort of relationship people are going to start having with essentially robots?
I mean, that's already happened, isn't it? AI girlfriends, AI boyfriends, and stuff like this. But then it comes back to my point that like if someone didn't really understand how to use technology and didn't develop a secure identity and doesn't have critical thinking, then they're just going to be vulnerable to this stuff, basically, right? Which is why it comes back to the first point that you have to have those things first, basically, isn't it?
So,
Yeah, and therefore I think as parents we have to
yeah,
be in schools they need to change how they teach people anyway, so that it's not just parrot learning,
Well,
but it's right.
I think it has to
But
be parents, to be honest, right? Like I
yeah,
think like
but then exactly, but the job of all of us who are responsible for bringing up these younger minds of how we teach them, how we challenge them,
what example you
how
set?
we make them question, and what example you set. Absolutely, yeah.
generation Alpha and Beta, they're called now, actually.
Is it?
I was doing my research for another
Ah,
generation. Yeah.
I'm
generation.
Gen X.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well,
But
exactly. All the
I'm a millennial technically, so
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
Gen
of
Y.
course you're doing.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, I may.
yeah,
I tasked you with that, didn't
yeah,
I?
yeah.
So, okay. I mean, everything you said, I would just honestly, I would love to sit down with you over dinner, and I think we would be going at it for hours because I love the way your brain works, and we're clearly aligned. He's already in the nail it way of thinking, Bhavin. Did you hear that? Which is why I think I know what pillar he's going to choose.
I know, I know. I
Have
heard
you
the
written
word
it
as well.
down? Or are we going
I
to do
heard
the
the
bet?
word as well. I heard the word
Okay,
as well.
so all right, that's our next question for you. Nail it pillars. There are 6 core pillars creating 38 components. Which of the 6 pillars do you feel resonates with you the most, that you see as the most important?
Tangibility.
You didn't think that, did you?
I do. I thought he was
You
going
would
to
say
say
integrity.
integrity.
Yeah, I was going to say integrity as well.
See, we were going to say integrity, and he's like, no, turn
He's
your
so
dreams
over
into
all of it.
reality.
He's all of them. He's all of them.
Isn't that a given? Isn't integrity a given?
Well,
Well, actually, this is what I said to you about 20 minutes ago about how your brain thinks. You think that's everybody, and believe me, it's
I don't think it's
not.
everybody, but you asked me, isn't it?
But
Right? So
not yeah, 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 yeah. It's just that's your filter. That's what you wear. It's already a conscious being. So
he's the
once you
first
change
person that
it,
said tangibility.
no, no, we've had one. We've
Have
had
we
one
had one
before.
before?
So tell us about tangibility. Why is that why do you feel that's the most important pillar for you?
I mean, I mean, if you're like listening to this and you're like reading about things and learning, obviously you want to evolve. Obviously you want to grow. You want to like reach the highest potential of whatever you want to do or impact more in whatever way you want to impact. The key thing is just, make it happen, make it real, isn't it? Turn your ideas into reality and make things happen, essentially. Like ultimately that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Turning vision into action. Like that's true power, right?
Yeah, right back to your quote.
Going back to your quote, I was like,
Knowledge, the wisdom is knowledge and action together. So the tangibility is probably actually it's the biggest pillar in terms of the number of components. It's got 11 components in it, and when I created it, it was very much around the fact that usually people just think they have a smart goal, they create some actions, and then they go for it without realizing that, or they try to go straight to that tangibility piece instead of actually realizing until you honor your needs, until you have emotional intelligence, until you understand exactly who you are, until you can silence your brain and allow kind of those messages to drop in and master your intuition and be limitless, feel free, challenge all the behaviors and thoughts that might be limiting you, you can't achieve. People talk about the law of attraction, think, ask, believe, and receive. It's not that easy. It's not that straightforward. If you're going to receive, you need to be in that complete alignment, which is ultimately, you still got to take actions. It's just what they call guided actions. So it's split up into 3 acronyms: AIM, ACT, ATTAIN. So the AIM piece is about anticipate. So that's kind of, your visualization, feel it, sense it, see it. The I is for intend. So no, really go for it, but make sure that you set intentions in the right way. So again, present tense and how do you phrase those? And the M is about move. You've actually just got to do it. You've got to get on with it. But therefore, how do you move? How do you get on with it? How do you find motivation? And then we have ACT. So this is then the next step. Once you've taken the action, it's about accountability. Over 65% more successful if you have it in some way. So tell someone what you're going to do, write it down, and then get on with it. Confidence, which is often one of the limiting things. You don't have the confidence. So the more you take the action, the more you start to see those step-by-step successes, the more confidence you'll get. But then how can you grow your confidence more? And sometimes you might want something, and this goes back to the earlier conversation, that people get so stuck in their heads that they're thinking inside the box rather than outside the box. So they think they can't do something, but the T is for talent, of like, actually, okay, if that's the next step you need to achieve, then you might have to go and study something or gain more skills, but it's still totally possible. And then the last part is the attain, which is probably that bit that's a little bit more aligned with the spirituality side, daily practices. So it's about acknowledging, making sure you really acknowledge your wins, acknowledge the milestones. People who are high performers very often get so tunnel vision, they just keep going and going, and they forget to actually celebrate each minute. I was certainly guilty of that. And then the double T's take time. Make sure you actually take time. So that's about feedback and reflection and continuing to tweak and improve. So you're continuing to grow. The next day is about appreciation, giving appreciation and appreciating yourself, and self-appreciation and gratitude. The I is about inspire, both in terms of how to get inspired, so getting into flow state, being really productive, but also how to inspire. And the last bit is the N is next, is therefore keep moving. So essentially, tangibility is about not just achieving one goal, not just achieving one dream, but being able to keep on a continual spiral of continuing to land those achievements, and you can work on more than one thing at once. So it's a big section, but yeah, I absolutely love it. So I'm so glad you brought that one up.
I think Rennie just proved that AI didn't write her book.
He knows my book pretty well now. You put in ranaal-falaki nail it model, and it was like blah, 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 blah. But that's a good thing. And look, just before we finish, if you had to give someone starting out with the use of AI, because there are still actually an awful lot of people who are a little bit afraid of it, or don't want to use it, or don't know how to use it, what would your message be to them?
I mean, I would basically say that like it's the same thing for anything. Experience it. Like, don't need to think about things or look at stuff. Just experience it, try it, do different stuff, use it personally, use it professionally. Like, take a photo of something, talk to the model, see what comes up, ask it to review your bank statements, obviously a paid version, like for, what expenses do you have here? Just start to understand. Basically, it's a lens through which you can see things you could never see before. So we have a phrase at Implement AI, so it's grow your workforce, not your payroll. But I always say start with see what you couldn't see before, then do what you couldn't do before, basically, right? So the point is like, first of all, start understanding, like how you can apply intelligence in different areas and unlocking things, and just have that experience. Then you decide for yourself like where the options are, but you have to experience it for yourself. This is one of those things, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. That's a brilliant bit of advice. Thank you so much. You've been such an amazing guest. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
For coming on. Brilliant.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Wow, Bav.
Wow, interesting guy.
I definitely think you were listening. It wasn't too much to go over your head, was it?
No, it wasn't. No. Like I say, look, the AI space is an amazing space, and I agree with that. Is that it's coming, right? Whether we like it or not, it's coming.
Yeah.
We've got to, I think, embrace it, and exactly as he says, try it, utilize it, and just help it make our lives better. Yeah. I don't see any harm in that. Obviously, there are the people that are concerned, quite rightly, in certain areas. But I think as long as you understand it and use it safely, and we can trust the powers that be, that hopefully at some point it will be regulated to an extent. I think it's something that we just got to get on with and bring it into our daily lives, professionally and personally.
Yeah, I think it's like, don't fear it, because we shouldn't fear anything else. But also the other thing that really resonated with me is that need for that parental responsibility as well, that we still allow our children to develop their brains.
I think that was so important.
Because if you've got a future, you're either going to need to be a coder or you're going to need to be a critical thinker. And so they need to learn how to do that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, what an amazing episode. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching. Please do hit the subscribe button, tell your friends about us, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Nail It podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review. And if you'd like to feature as one of our guests, or you're ready to nail it, then check out our events, programs, and educational courses by visiting nailitindentistry.com.